Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September edition of the Power Hour. We return to the monthly broadcast of industry developments and insights over the next hour with some key talks by GiG, Aspire Global and Hyperion. This last month, we've been seeing continuing developments in mergers and acquisitions and financial performances. In the States, W Games launched its IPO on the NASDAQ exchange in the US, looking to secure some $126 million injection of capital. Despite the concern the pandemic would cause to the gaming state of Nevada, we've seen another broken record with revenues reaching $1.36 billion in a single month. Within the affiliate world, we've seen Gambling.com Group present their first set of results since listing on the NASDAQ, another positive outcome with revenues growing $4 million to $10.4 million in Q2. North of the border, we see a week into a single event sports betting being launched in Canada, which I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity to come for that iGaming industry. In people moves across the industry, we've seen Global Gaming Women, an industry group that focuses on development of women in the gambling sector, appoint Cassie Stratford of Boyd Gaming as its new president. Aspire Global have recently appointed Scientific Games Director Quincy Raven as Managing Director of its US business, and Genius Sport named former ESPN CEO Bornstein as its North American president. Closer to home, we've seen the Malta Gambling Authority cancel EvoBet's license in the country after ruling it breached rules relating to payments of regulatory fees. Continuing on this theme, Mr Green has also been forced to pay 31 million kroner for recent customer failings, and the Dutch KSA have had a stern warning with the sector over new powers to stop illegal gambling. It is actually crazy to believe that we're nearing the end of 2021 already. 4 months left before we welcome in 2022. September sees the start of the event season after taking some traditional event summer break. An opportunity we hope will give us all a chance to finally meet in person. That said, the Power Hour in November will return after our flagship event in Valletta on 20th and 21st of October, where I hope to see most of you there. For now though, enjoy, sit back and relax, enjoy the Power Hour and stay safe, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
2020 brought about the change of a generation. The convenient, the predictable, the status quo, all disrupted. The true nature of the iGaming industry was revealed. Resilient, responsible and creative. This October, it's time to lead the industry forward and redefine our relationship with each other and the wider investment and tech industries. Join us in the majestic World Heritage City of Valletta for disrupting the status quo.
It's our industry, it's our time, the future is ours.
This is iGaming Next 2021.
Martin, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Pierre. All good here. How about yourself?
I am doing absolutely fantastic, and I want to just start off by congratulating you to the promotion as Director of Sale and Business Development of GIG.
Okay, thank you very much. It's appreciated. A big challenge, but I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, Martin. And after knowing you for a couple of years, I've been impressed by the journey that you had. I was happy to see that you were able to take this on. So, yeah, exciting times.
No, absolutely. It's James did a great job for us on sales, so it's not as if I'm having to devise an entire new strategy. I'm picking up where he left off, and we already have a great team in place. We're adding a few new people in order to bring sales, BD and marketing together, but ultimately the base is there in order to build upon, so I'm quite happy about that.
Absolutely, and it seems like the AG has really good momentum now. The quarterly report came out the other day; showed it was really great, and it's a lot of good momentum. So it's I'm excited to see what's to come here with the AG. But before we head into, I want to ask you a little bit more about the AG later on. But the topic of the day is regulatory implementation and where we are heading. And we're talking regulation today, and if any two people can make regulation. A discussion around regulation fun. It's you and me, Martin. So, are you ready?
Yeah, I think we can manage that. I think people might be quite interested on our views on these things.
Yes, absolutely, we are. And so I'm curious to start here. The pre-regulated, newly regulated, and post-regulated markets, they all have their own challenges, right? But yep. And it's something we talked about in the prep call here as well, that you segmented them into these 3 different segments. Can you talk about each one of the challenges that these segments bring? Like what does a pre-regulated, a newly regulated, and a post-regulated market? What are the challenges into these segments?
Okay, so let's start with pre-regulated. So generally, as you know, our strategy is very much concentrating on the regulated market side of things.
Right.
However, we need to be a little bit ahead of the curve. So if a market is discussing regulation, then we want to be very much involved in that market. Now, what does that mean? It means that either we wait until the regulation is finalised and then we go into that market. We may already be in that market with other brands through an MGA scenario, or it means that we need to go into that market initially for a pre-period of time with an MGA scenario, for example, and then change it to the newly regulated scenario. Now, what does that mean? It ultimately means for us that it's a lot more work, because from a technical perspective, because firstly we need to deliver the solution in the instance that would be required now from a compliance perspective, but then ultimately, when the regulation becomes live, in the run-up to that, we need to deliver an instance that will allow for that. So the pre-regulated, we see it as an opportunity because we get to know the customer, we can understand how things operate, and ultimately it should give us an opportunity in certain scenarios in order to be able to work with the regulator, in order to help them understand how best to deliver regulation in their jurisdiction. So, but it depends, because some regulators are open to discussion and some aren't. So the idea of harmonisation, even in somewhere like the US, really doesn't exist like it should, in my opinion. So so we said pre-regulation in terms of newly regulated markets. That's a big opportunity. Some might turn around and say, okay, so data will tell you that you need to invest a third more marketing budget in order to maintain the same level of NGR, and there's no doubt that that's true. However, again, we see this as an opportunity because we're very much about retail to online. So what we see with the retail to online scenario is that these guys have a lot of experience of regulation from the retail side, so they understand it better. And obviously, with us not doing white labels anymore, all of the liability from a compliance perspective tends to sit with the operator who has the license. So these guys have that exposure, they have that understanding, and that creates a partnership between us and them in order to drive their brand equity and ensure that they're getting the biggest opportunity from their marketing spend in it doesn't necessarily need to be a more competitive market, but ultimately their marketing spend isn't going as far as it would have done pre-regulation. So it's about creating a partnership with these guys within a new sort of framework, and ensuring that they can take the brand equity they have, they can take the existing customer base that they have, and they can create a seamless scenario between their retail and their online offering.
Right.
And then,
right.
And then, in terms of the regulator within these scenarios, again, I'd love to say that there was 3 or 4 different instances and we could put them all into these buckets, but unfortunately, each one has their own unique nuances. So, if you take Germany, for example, it's a really interesting scenario, because a year ago, if you told me that Germany would be partially regulated, from my experience I've worked in Germany and done business in Germany for many years, I would never ever have thought that could be possible, because it's just not in their psyche, in their makeup.
Yeah.
But
the
we have
efficient Germans, yes.
Absolutely. And we have this scenario now whereby it's really, really complicated, and it's not clear exactly when it's going to be resolved. So it's... And obviously in Germany as well, the actual regulator has only just been appointed in the last couple of weeks as well.
Right.
And
when you say partially regulated, you mean the operators are regulated, but not the platforms, for example? Or?
Well, no, what I mean is that there's certain scenarios, like, for example, the central activity database that's mentioned in the legislation. Okay, however, that's not been implemented yet. So there's certain aspects of the regulation that have been implemented and certain aspects that haven't. Okay. So now, obviously, this takes time. I appreciate that, and changes need to occur in order to improve. We're a big advocate for looking after the player and making sure that they're not operating in unsafe environments. But we're absolutely for that. But in the same token, if the line is drawn, we would like it. Obviously, everybody would like it to be there. Do you understand? So, with these newly regulated markets, it's unclear with each of them if that is the actual line and that's where it's going to stop, and all the work that we deliver, the content providers, everybody within the market has to deliver. Okay, whether that's going to be it finished or whether there's going to be further work further down the line, ultimately eating into margin and revenue.
Right.
And then the more established regulated markets, I suppose it's very similar to the newly regulated markets. Let's take Italy, for example. I mean, I read recently that Italy are talking about reducing their licenses from like 120 to round about 40.
Right, and so increasing prices.
And increasing prices, exactly, right? So this is interesting because in 2017, 2018, when they were reviewing it, they wanted to give more people the opportunity in order to enter the market. But with the potential marketing restrictions that they have there, obviously you need some sort of brand equity in order to be able to get any substantial market share. So these small guys are taking, or the smaller guys within the equation are taking small chunks of the market, and ultimately it's so small it must be very, very difficult for them to be profitable. So it's interesting that the regulator is looking at the overall scenario and saying that ultimately we need 40 brands in this market, or 40 operators with licenses, and we see that as the most competitive landscape in order to build it, rather than having the 100, 120 that they have now. Yeah. So it's really interesting that Italy's one of the most established individual country regulations, and it's really interesting their evolution. And what you'll probably find is that each jurisdiction will go through an evolution. It might be slightly different depending on the market and the consumers in that market and the regulator itself, but ultimately they'll go through an evolution of understanding and making adjustments. And we you know what, again, we see that as a competitive advantage for us, because given the configuration in our scenario in the gig platform, it allows us to be able to adjust relatively quickly and move forward with it.
All right, yeah, interesting to hear that. And I have a question as well on especially around the newly regulated markets. And regulation that is often up for interpretation. I think Sweden was a great example of this when the regulation was launched, and it wasn't clear to the operators exactly what the regulator meant in some instances, and it had to go to court multiple times before the operators actually understood what the regulator meant. What do you get the same feeling here as well, that this tends to be a reoccurring issue for newly regulated markets? And how do GIG tackle this ambiguousness in the newly regulated markets for their clients? Okay,
so first of all, we have a fantastic legal and compliance team. They are, Claudio Caruana, who you may have seen in certain publications over the years, he's a machine when it comes to these things, genuinely, and he's our Bible when we have to discuss these things, Pierre.
A compliance machine, I like it.
He is a compliance machine, compliance and legal machine. But ultimately, what this comes down to is your risk appetite as a license holder. Okay, so as I sort of indicated, configuration within a platform, whether it's gig, whether it's anybody else, the majority have a certain level of configuration within them, and ultimately it's down to the license holder to define what their risk appetite is across each of the various compliance areas that exist. So, for example, the UK is a really good example of this, Pierre. I remember listening to an interview with the UKGC individual. His name escapes me at the minute, but I remember him saying that we are not going to explicitly say what the operators should deliver in terms of RG, in terms of data, in terms of protection of the customer. Okay, what we expect, they're the guy. Basically, what he was saying is the operators are the guys with the data, with information, and it's down to them in order to define exactly how they're going to work within our framework that we've created. So it's not an explicit this is how it has to work, but obviously the UK has issued lots of fines for various reasons. But going back to my original point, that it's ultimately down to the risk appetite of the organisation, and ultimately, I suppose the officiousness of the regulator themselves is a combination of both of those in order to understand the happy medium and be able to operate and do things that work but protect the player at the same time.
Right. Yeah, it's also ties a little bit together with something else I've been thinking about, which is the fact that going back to Sweden, when the regulation was launched, it seemed very much that it took the industry by surprise in how strict the regulation actually was, and many operators seemed to struggle at that time to stay compliant with the strict new regulation. It seems that the industry wasn't really prepared for that level of scrutiny. In other words, but from my humble eyes, it seems that the industry has really adjusted to, let's say, the new normal, or what you could call it in this strictly regulated environment. What, in your opinion, Martin, like what's the biggest difference in how you approach staying compliant then to now?
I think it's about maturity, Pierre. I think that the industry, not just gig again, the industry as a whole has matured and understood that, and it's understood that regulation is an inevitability. It's an inevitability. So there was a long time when we thought that, there's still some brands that are arguing about the MGA scenario and being able to operate across the EU, for example. So there's still people maybe a little bit further back than some others. You always have that within an industry, right? But as a whole, if we take maturity from a regulatory perspective, I think the industry has matured massively. Is it where finance is? Yeah, absolutely not. Okay, because they've had decades of it. Yeah. But if we say that we've had a decade of regulation, then there's no question in my mind that everybody has had to start to consider it as part of their strategy and had to consider it as part of the impact that it has on their business. Now, the way that we view it, and it took a little bit of time for sure, but the way that we view it is that actually it helps you create a more sustainable organisation in the long term, and it allows you to create a more sustainable customer base for not just the B2B customers we have, but also the consumers that they serve. So, right. I think in the past, maybe that was less of a concern, but now because of the inevitability of regulation, people have embraced it, and by embracing it and making it part of your strategy. And if you look at anything that we at Gig outwardly market, it's generally around regulated markets and retail to online. That's our sort of tagline. That's what we want to promote. That's where we want to be. That's our sweet spot. So as soon as the regulation gets embraced into a commercial strategy, then it becomes more important. And right. It becomes more mature. And if you look on LinkedIn, Pierre, if you and I were to go on to the job section on LinkedIn for iGaming, right, I guarantee you that 20% of the roles are in compliance now.
Yeah.
So that in itself tells you how important it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the industry really walked through the fire there for a couple of years. The whole industry changed, had to change, and there was a couple of years where it felt like the industry was struggling a bit in order to come to terms with this new world of staying compliant and what it meant to their organizations. It's obviously extremely resource heavy, as you mentioned here as well. But out of that came some really great organizations, and it seemed organizations like GIG have adjusted to this and kind of taken advantage of the fact that especially the European markets are so strictly regulated, and your expertise can then obviously bring new clients to market. But I'm curious to know as well, looking at Europe, operators seems to have a little bit the feeling of that the European market is slightly flat, let's say, in revenue-wise, and it's a lot about optimization in Europe and so on. What do you feel? What's your predictions for the future of the European market, regulatory-wise, and how does DIG view it? Are you expecting the certain European jurisdictions to be growth markets still, or is the focus more on efficiency in these markets?
Well, we still see an opportunity in Europe as a whole. Now, obviously, there's certain markets where regulation has had a massive hit in terms of the revenue potential. We've mentioned Sweden and we've mentioned the UK, and it'll be interesting to see how Germany pans out. But I know that the regulation to date has certainly had an impact on potential revenues. However, there are still, I think, as a whole, in Europe as a whole, that you find that there's markets like Romania, like the Balkans, okay, even Portugal, for example, even Italy, given the opportunity, whereby if you have a competitive advantage with your tech platform, then you can actually continue to eat into the market share. We can help our customers drive revenue and increase their market share in these countries. And if you look at the H2 data, Pierre, as well, remember the shift from retail to online continues year on year. So I think post pre-COVID, I think it was about 12% of the overall gambling market was online, and now it's up to 15-16%. So that's accelerated that scenario, which means that in all of these markets that there's still an opportunity. I mean, we're talking about billions and billions of euros here.
Right.
So there's still an opportunity, but I think it's really important that you're armed from a regulatory perspective, that you have a partner in terms of your tech. And I think I've said this many times before as well, but I think data is really, really important. I think that in the past, affiliates have driven a big chunk of the revenue. If you look at the performance of our media business, it's incredible. It's still the case, right? Yeah. But you can get a competitive advantage through your data and optimization and your UX on your site. If you build these things and you have brand equity, like I discussed earlier with regards to the retail brands, then you can still grow a brand within these markets. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a really interesting niche that you found that was really accelerated by the pandemic, of course, where all of a sudden the land-based casinos had a very good incentive to go to online, and it's a clear there's a clear trend with that shift, of course, and I've learned that through previous sessions that we've done before. And, I will disclose as well, I'm a shareholder of GIG as well. I think it's important to mention here. And so my last question is something that is important to myself as well, which is, after some time of soul searching within GIG, it really feels like the company is destined for really good things again. Like I said, the quarterly report here last week was great, and the investors are happy. But can you tell us a little bit more, like what do you see as the GIG's vision for the next couple of years? Where do you want to take the company? Where do you envision this to go? Because it's not only you have the media side as well, of course, the sportsbook, and on top of the platform. Where do you see the company going?
So you're right. We've had 5 quarters in a row where we've shown positive results. So that's a step in the right direction. And the teams across GIG, I can talk about platform because that's my area. And everybody in platform, and I'm sure in media as well, are working incredibly hard in order to deal with the challenges that we face in the market at the moment. And we've discussed one of the main ones today, Pierre, in terms of regulation and compliance. Right. That's when we are trying to grow, when we are looking at the addressable market that we have as a platform. It's one of the biggest challenges, and it's something that we need to constantly keep on top of, which is why I'm so appreciative of people like Claudio that I mentioned. So we believe that we will be, or we know that we will be a platform of choice within regulated markets, because we know we can deliver within these markets. Yeah. We understand the different nuances. We believe we can bring value in conversations with regulators, as I sort of indicated to you as well, if that is their want. So from the platform perspective, we see it growing. We're very selective about the customers that we want to bring onto our platform. We don't want anything sort of flash in the pan. We want to be dealing with large brands, okay, preferably in regulated or regulating markets, so that we can take advantage of their sort of brand equity that I mentioned to you. So I think more of the same. Obviously, from a tech perspective, we need to continually update and iterate on what we have, okay, because without that, we're going to stay stagnant. And innovation isn't in the name of gig by chance. It's there for a reason. We need to innovate. We need to be ahead of the curve. And ultimately, we want to increase our market share, Pierre, within this addressable market that I mentioned to you. That's where we want to be. And we're having, the sales team that we have now, next week we have another salesperson starting in the team, which I'm really looking forward to. And the conversations that we're having with everybody across this addressable market is really, really interesting. And I see a lot of partnerships being created, and ultimately is working together in order to create a win-win scenario. And that's win from their perspective, okay, but win from obviously our perspective as well. I think that's how I see the next 2-3 years.
Awesome. Well, I can see you have a nicely drawn photo of Diego Maradona here behind you, so you could say that the idea is the Diego Maradona of platforms. You could say, in other words, that's the vision.
I'm not, I suppose so, but I'm not sure some people would like that. Diego Maradona, 1986. Let's say.
All right. Okay. Let's stick to that. Yeah. Okay. What a great way to end the conversation today, I think. Martin, thank you for giving us an update here on the regulatory implementation and landscape in Europe at the moment. And obviously, it's an exciting journey that you're on, and I'm very much following and looking forward to what's to come in your journey. And congratulations again to the promotion, Martin. It's been great talking to you today. Any last words from your end?
No, thanks for your time, Pierre. I always enjoy our conversations and look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Same here, buddy. Take care of yourself, okay?
All the best. Cheers, Pierre. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello and welcome to the iGaming Next Power Hour, where for the next 19 minutes and 56 seconds we are going to be doing a deep dive all about managed services and examining what it means to have a managed success within iGaming. So success in online sportsbook or iCasino is very much dependent on the right choice of managed services. Modern post-COVID businesses are improving efficiencies, reducing costs and fostering flexibility and agility, but above all, increasing customer value. So, what does the next generation of managed services look like? Let's find out with two gentlemen with a long heritage from the iGaming space who are bringing their expertise to the next generation of managed services. My name's Oisín Lunny. I'm a journalist, podcast host for Fortune 500 companies and an event MC. I will see you at iGaming Next in Valletta later on in the year. But now please welcome to the virtual Power Hour stage, Paul Myatt, who is the Chief Business Development Officer at Aspire Global. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Oisín. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, mate. And Antoine Bonello, who's the Chief Operating Officer and Managing Director at Aspire Global. Welcome, Antoine.
Hi, Oisín. Thanks for having us.
Great to have you both here. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, time is marching on. My goodness me, we're at 18 minutes, 37 seconds. So I think it would be really useful for our iGaming Power Hour delegates. It's all about powering up their business knowledge, their expertise, their opportunities, and you know, you've both worked at some of the giants of the industry, both in the B2B and the B2C space. You know, folks like NetEnt, Betfair, Mr. Green, William Hill, Paddy Power. So, Paul, talk to us a bit about how this kind of blended heritage of B2B and B2C services actually informs what you do at Aspire, because I think it's super interesting to understand that special sauce that Aspire offers with the managed services.
Okay, thanks, Oshin. I've been in iGaming for 10 years, and all of that time has been on the B2B side. So I was at NetEnt from 2010 for 5 years, and then Quickspin for 5 years from 2015. So my whole experience is on the B2B side, and Aspire Global is absolutely a B2B supplier. So we have our sights and ambitions on being the biggest and the best in this space, and we have a full range of products that we can bring to iGaming operators for them to be successful. Everything from platform to games aggregation to sports, and what is essentially our bread and butter is our managed services, and that's something we'd like to talk to you about today.
Fantastic. And talk to us a bit about the actual kind of managed services you offer to the iGaming sector. What are the kind of bread and butter, the operational side of things that some of the folks watching might like to know about?
Sure. Important to just define what we're talking about when it comes to managed services. So, essentially what we're talking about here is the operational services towards players. So, essential services that any successful iGaming operator needs to provide. We're essentially talking about customer support, CRM, fraud and risk management, payments, compliance, AML, KYC. All these super important functions that any iGaming operator needs to provide towards their players. And essentially what we're saying at Aspire is, through our history and our heritage, we've been we've been in this business for 15 years, and we've been a B2C operator. That's our DNA. We have the experience and the knowledge to supply these complete managed services to operators. They can take it as a whole or as a modular approach, and we believe we can help reduce some of the burden and the cost and the expense of bringing these managed services towards an operator's players.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely. And coming over to yourself, Antoine, you've got a phenomenal background in B2B iGaming companies, some of the biggest names I mentioned in the intro there. Talk to us a bit about how this informs what Aspire does now and where is it going, because it's kind of an interesting mix of that B2C perspective with your B2C offering right now, or vice versa.
Yeah, if I may correct you there, all my experiences in B2C.
Right, did I say B2B? I'm so sorry.
But that's exactly. So I've always worked for operators, and I did what operators do. Try and optimize the spend of when you're acquiring customers, and then managing customers through the different life stages, and trying to get customer loyalty, because that increases customer value. And I've done that at Betfair, done that at Mr. Green, and then in the latter part of my time at Mr. Green, we were bought by William Hill. And it's always a bit of a stumbling block when an operator goes multi-brand, or is operating over different platforms, or is getting the PAM from one supplier, and then you get different architecture. Your stack becomes complicated and it becomes disjointed. And at the end of the day, you end up having customers calling your help desk about a promotion that's gone wrong, and your customer service agent trying to figure out what exactly has gone wrong and which system do they need to get into and how do they troubleshoot that to at the end of the day resolve the customer query. And these are issues that operators face. And what we do at Aspire is try to have a holistic view. We sit on top of all the technology in the value chain that we need to give the customer experience that we want to achieve. We believe that we are sitting on what can provide one of the best propositions to the industry. We do it for our own brands, and we want to do it for others. We do it for others in anger. We have a number of customers who decide to focus on their brand positioning, to focus on their marketing, to focus on getting traffic, and they leave it up to us to monetize on that. And that's what we do, and that's what we want to do more of, but more as a B2B.
Yeah.
So we like to refer to this as B2B2C. which in other words is also managed services.
Very smart. I like that aspect of joining the dots. And of course, you know how to do it very well because of that B2C background. Not B2B, as I said earlier. But it's like you can join the dots because you've gone through those kind of painful lessons yourselves as a B2C provider. So you're kind of taking away the pain, making life easier for the operators that you work with, and offering that end-to-end B2B2C service. I think that's fantastic. So talk to us a bit about what this means in terms of driving the proposition, building scale, driving customer value, etc. What does that look like for some of your customers in practical terms?
Yeah, I mean, when the mention of managed services brings to mind almost what I spoke about earlier right away: customer services, player management, fraud, risk, payments, and sometimes we overlook the customer, the direct value generating side, which is CRM. Yeah. And this is where I believe we are taking Aspire's proposition to where no one has kind of taken it before, because on top of the traditional services, we're building this data enabled layer powered by a customer data platform that allows us to not only run a multi-brand proposition, but within that have a more localized, more personalized experience for the different customers. So via this technology, at the end of the day, we can provide an experience that is adapted to the different customer segment, down to the micro segment level. We can do real-time marketing at different touch points, and we can handhold the partners, customers all along the way to ensure that we maximize that lifetime value and we guarantee an ROI on their acquisition spend.
Fantastic. I mean, that's the thing, because you're providing this complete end-to-end service. It's got micro segmentation. It's data driven. You can really offer things that are not possible with a collection of disconnected managed services from different providers, or even, in many cases, a mixture of in-house and external. Because you're doing the whole thing, you have that single view of the customer and you have that joined up technology stack that really adds value. That's fantastic. Now, Paul, coming over to yourself, there's a bit of a truism in the world of technology that some new technology is a problem in search of a solution. You often hear that, but you're actually solving real world pain points for your customers and the operators. Talk to us a bit about the kind of pain points that your solution, your managed services, actually gets rid of for your customers.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think in terms of what operators are thinking about, what's keeping them awake at night. I mean, certainly when it comes to the players, I mean, players are more demanding than ever before. I mean, there's more choice in the market than ever before. Players need to be responded to quickly. They need their queries answering quickly. They need the best offers and promotions. They're very demanding when it comes to cash outs, etc., etc. So, I mean, the operators that are not providing top-notch operational services towards their players are essentially the operators that are going to lose out. So, I mean, it's just the player demand and providing a top-notch service towards players. I mean, clearly that's always in the mind of operators, and of course, very much now, as every operator will know, we live in a world of compliance. It's absolutely vital that operators are engaging with players in a fully compliant way. At best, if this is not happening in a compliant way, we've all seen the fines that have been happening in recent years. At worst, you can lose your license. I mean, and then you don't have a business. So, having compliant engagement with players, is absolutely paramount. And again, what Antoine and I said earlier, this goes back to our kind of heritage and our experience and our professionalism, because B2C is at the core of Aspire. It's in our DNA, and we've been doing this for a very long time. So we feel that we can help release that burden and provide a very experienced professional managed service to our operators so they can remove some of these headaches that they're facing.
Indeed. Yeah, I completely agree with your point on compliance there. You know, it can be absolutely fatal to a business in a sector not to have the best possible compliance. So I like your focus on that. Antoine, coming over to yourself, now talk to us a bit about some of the results, like some of the numbers. How many countries are you in? How many customers do you have roughly? And, what are you seeing as the impact in terms of increasing player value from your managed services in this space?
Yeah, I mean, we currently run 90 plus brands, which is, I mean, to me, it's impressive in itself, because that creates more complexity. It needs to be done with an element of rigor. It needs to be done by having the right people, the right training, the right skills, and more importantly, the right tools. We're talking here brands that we operate with in regulated markets, hence why the need and the demand for top-notch compliance. And we do that very well. We've been doing that very well. The results are showing. We've just announced our Q2 results that are an all-time high in revenue, number of customers, deposits. So that's a good sign. We must be doing something well. And the way we see it is that we are also building to scale further. I mean, what I spoke about earlier, just getting the organization to think in a data-led way, where whether we're doing compliance, CRM, player management, we're doing it with the technology that allows us to have that single customer view. So whether we want to interact in real time with a customer for a promotion or for an offer, or whether we want to do that to do an RG interaction, we can build that, and we have the flexibility to adapt that by market, by brand, and this is where we're striking the right balance in winning that customer's trust, making sure that we are fully compliant to RG and AML regulations, and at the end of the day, managing to sustainably grow customer value in a responsible way. I mean, I've worked in the UK market for quite some time, and also in most of the regulated markets, and I can see that this formula that we're working on at Aspire we're reaping the results. We can see, I can see customer value and lifetime value that relative to other companies that I worked for is very, very good, and this is a testament to everything that we've spoken about today. It all comes together at the end of the day in performance, and customer value is the KPI, the outcome that one would be looking for when doing managed services. So I think we're on something good here.
Good. Very happy to hear that. Excellent news. Win-win-win. I mean, some people say that data is the new oil. Other people say that trust is the new oil. And I think you're proving that both things can be true at the same time. Now, Paul, coming over to yourself, I mean, obviously there's a lot of technology there, a lot of, stuff under that managed services hood. If you had to pick one thing that our esteemed Power Hour delegates for iGaming Next should know about, like one piece of kit or one service element that you offer, what would it be? Where would you direct people to have a look?
Yeah, I mean, first, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's to offer great operational services. It's a mix, really. I mean, it's a mix of highly trained teams, and it's a mix of cutting edge technology and tools. And ultimately, Aspire Global, we are a technology company. So I mean, we've been investing in what we believe are the best tools to support with our operational services towards operators. But if you ask me to pick out one in particular, again, it's what Antoine alluded to earlier. It's our CRM tool, which we've branded Aspire Engage. We've invested a lot of money in this tool. It's the tool that our CRM teams would use as part of the operational service towards, as a managed service towards our operators. And I think it's one of those things that you really need to see it with your own eyes to fully appreciate the benefits that it can bring to an operation. And essentially, it's the key benefit of Aspire Engage, our new CRM tool, is the real-time communication of offers and promotions towards players. Based on a real-time player behavior that we see. So, I mean, while the player is in a session, I mean, it could be anything like maybe it's a string of losses, or maybe it's a string of wins, or maybe it's hitting scatters on a slot, or a big win, or something like that. Whatever the trigger is, we can send out a promotional message or an offer or a communication to the player while they're in the session. So I mean, it's incredibly powerful. You really need to see it with your own eyes. We're happy for anyone to contact us, and we can arrange the presentation and demonstration. But like Antoine says, it's really starting to pay dividends now, and the results are showing in the LTV that we're seeing from players. So extremely powerful CRM tool with Aspire Engage.
Fantastic. So there you have it. Aspire Engage is what you need to check out. Do reach out to Paul or Antoine or even myself or any of the iGaming crew on LinkedIn, through the chat window, on any of the socials, using the regular hashtags to find out more. And I hope you do get a chance to check out Aspire Engage and reach out to the guys and see what they can do for you. Thank you so much for joining us. We are running down to our final seconds of our 20 minutes of this fantastic Power Hour. I do hope I'm going to see some of you out at iGaming Next in Valletta. That's going to be so much fun. In the meantime, I just wanted to say thank you to our managed services VIPs for joining us. Thank you to Paul Myatt, Chief Business Development Officer at Aspire Global.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Oisin.
And thank you so much to Antoine Bonello, Chief Operating Officer and Managing Director at Aspire Global.
It's been great chat, great session. Thank you, Oisin.
See you all next time. Enjoy the rest of the Power Hour.
All the best.
Bye, everyone.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's Power Hour. This session today is looking at extending your talent and company reach, and I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by Rory Zilberstein, Chief Business Development Officer at Hyperion Tech. Welcome, Rory.
Hi, it's like very nice of you to have me. I've seen a lot of the Power Hours, so it's like, it's a great honor to be here. Yeah.
Great, it was great to have you on board. So thank you. Now we're looking at sort of remote teams and how that sort of can integrate into current companies. I would like to just put something out there and say, look, is it more of a cost saving exercise you see these companies why they're outsourcing nowadays, or is it more like to help their bottom line? What's sort of your view on that, or do you think that the remote working and the sort of the remote teams that we create is actually beneficial for organizations?
It's like that's a great question. I think a lot of companies, when they started back in the day to outsource, some of it was kind of a shortcut to like increase bottom line, or maybe kind of decrease the costs. But I think that what we are building now, or what we are seeing, is that it becomes more productive for companies to actually build extensions, R&Ds for their own teams. It means that they have an internal team that kind of works from the inside, the day-to-day, but they also command like a bigger external tech team that actually operates as an extension of the company. So if you think about it, the focus that we found that was more effective is at the moment those developers that sits outside are actually adapted to the company culture, then it increases the bottom line. And also it's a lot cheaper. So it's kind of a win-win situation. So although I think a lot of companies take it as shortcut to kind of cut costs, it can be amplified much more effectively if it's done right. So if the company, or what we saw, when the company doesn't treat it as some sort of like shortcut, like, oh, let's just get these guys, they will do some work and that's it, but they actually treat them as part of the team, it works much better.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that not, is a tendency just to like, you have, when you outsource these kind of things, that people come in, they drop in, and they disappear. Are you saying that it's much beneficial to have those teams like what you guys do and sort of have them embed into the culture almost in that sort of way, and sort of become part of that team almost in that sense? And you're finding that's much better?
It's shifting the mindset from technology, especially in iGaming. So we have a lot of iGaming and also finance and some clients that are not iGaming focused, but especially in iGaming, what we see is it's very tech oriented industry. So technology is a big investment for most companies. There was kind of the old school thought before the pandemic, pre-COVID, that all of the technology needs to be in the office. If someone doesn't work in the office, we cannot work with them, and so on. Obviously, in 2019, when the pandemic hit, it's changed all of these aspects because everybody works from home. But then, we found that it's the moment it's being seen as a real extension of the technology part, the branch that you have in the company, it works much more effectively than if it's just some sort of, pop in and out project and so on. A lot of developers or a lot of CTOs can relate that developers also take time to learn the system and kind of what the tech stack is. So if you bring someone from the outside and they need in 2 weeks to just learn the entire tech and deliver something, it's not the same if someone works on the same thing for like a year or 9 months or 10 months and so on.
So there's a lot of preparation work goes into this then, I assume, in terms of getting to understand the clients, and do you have instances where you actually refuse clients because you're not happy with their culture, or how does that operate within
That's also a great question. I think, so most companies in our sector have a bench. So they have a roster of developers of all sorts of technologies. There is a client coming in the door, they have some deliberations with the client, and then they decide, those like other players in the sector, okay, I have these 2 developers that are this technology, let's just put them. It's kind of beats the purpose, because I think the client needs something very specific, and what we do is we recruit specifically for that client. So we don't have a bench, we don't have a roster of like some developers sitting there and not working. Every developer is actually very specific for a client, and we find it to be much more effective, because then we bring a team that actually connects with the client culture and it fits their needs, but even to the level of the CV. So we had clients that they said, okay, we need 3 developers of this kind for like 3 months and that's it. It's something that less us, we cannot help in that sort of plug and play, shortcut, quick wins, easy fixes, stuff like that. We are much more focused on actually building extension technology for a company than just a project. So we had clients that we had to obviously refuse. But the process, I think it's pretty, once a developer sits in the chair, it's very easy to know if they fit or not. And the developer also knows. So it's kind of, from our experience, it usually works well. We had very few instances we needed, we brought someone, they start to work, and then the client says, oh my God, what is this? But if it happens, we replace them. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, and with this, obviously, it's benefited maybe you guys in somewhat with what's been going on with the pandemic. And I'm just interested, have you had to change in any way? Obviously, if you're an outsourcing type business or talent business, that would arguably be easier for you to upsell and offer your services. And but I'm just interested internally, have you seen any like changes that you've had to overcome? A lot of large corporations have had to completely change the way they've been doing things, and just interested as this is what you are good at and what you do. Have you actually seen any sort of change internally that you've had to adapt or?
Yeah, that's. So you mean from pre-pandemic to pandemic? I think that. So us as a company, obviously, when clients build with us their extension of technology, then it's remotely. So obviously, our developers sit or they set in an office in Kharkiv, in Ukraine. And when the pandemic hit, the major change that we had to do for the safety of our employees, they went to work from home. Hyperion, before the pandemic, already had a policy that if you want to work from home, you can work from home. You don't have to come to the office. The pandemic actually allowed us to refine kind of what processes are effective for people to be in the office for and what not, which before the pandemic, it was a little bit hard to see. So, for example, if teams need to do brainstorming sessions or there's more high-level strategic stuff, then they usually sit together in the office, now in much smaller numbers because we care about their safety. But then the moment pandemic hit, we almost instantly went, this company goes remote, in my view, forever, which means there would be an office. If you want to work from the office, you can. If you don't want to work from the office, you can work from home. You know, there's a lot of people that, and that's the thing you learn when everybody goes to work from home. Some people cannot work from home. They have like 5 kids and the wife is already working from home, and it's not really a conducive environment to then sit and concentrate and so on. And we need to offer these solutions. But I think from a client perspective, we anticipated, like everyone, that we are going to see some sort of hit. So the moment the pandemic hit, we realized everybody went into conservation mode. Projects were started to be a little slower in that sense. And we also anticipated it. So we started to make some sort of preparations for that. I was very surprised that it seemed to be the exact opposite. So few months after the pandemic hit, we started to get a lot of requests when it comes to extensions, so we can build R&D.
Everyone panicking, just going.
Oh, so I think part of it was the first point you mentioned. Some people realized that they can cut costs, and it's much cheaper, and it's a time of uncertainty, so they wanted. Some companies were thinking about it, but they were not mature enough internally before the pandemic. But then after the pandemic, they said, you know what? This is the time to try it out. We can outsource certain parts of our technology outside. So we saw that happening. I think we were kind of lucky because the business model we work with is a lot of it is remote. So processes, communications, everybody went to Zoom. So all of these processes we had before, people wanted to work from home. Security is like a big issue. People sit with their own computers working on sensitive data. We had that sorted out. Compliance, when we need to deal with, we had that sorted out. So these are kind of hurdles that I think companies dealt with in the beginning of the pandemic, which we already sorted out. And it also helped us a lot when we onboarded new clients. So when we had new clients working, it was already, it was very relieving for clients to see that it's something that was already solved. They don't need to actually deal with all of these issues. They already have it like in the bag. So I think it was, the biggest surprise was the uptick in how much companies in the industry wanted to all of a sudden outsource their technology. That was, I didn't prepare for that. It's like
good position to be in. But yeah, look, I mean, on that subject, how do you ever see us going back? I mean, I've joined iGaming Next. The it's remote working. Would you see? Is there an argument to say hybrid or fully remote or fully physical? What's your sort of opinion on that, and what your clients are saying as well, I suppose?
So before I was in Hyperion, I worked in one of the iGaming companies, and everybody that worked with me can testify I'm a little bit biased for office. So I'm very much an office person. I like the coffee, I like the conversations, I like the fact that I can go and tap someone on the shoulder, have the conversation. It's sort of, I'm very
water cooler moment.
It's like I'm very much like that. It's like so my personal bias is I wish we could all go to have like office spaces and meet one another. I think there's a quality to it that is very important in some aspects of the business, especially if it's product or marketing and stuff like that. I can say that. So this is and I will attach it to the question you asked. One of the things we saw about developers is that when they were in the office, especially all of the hyped open office space and so on, productivity was suffering because developers a lot of the time need to focus on the task. And then the moment they had a lot of brainstorming meetings, it becomes like death by meeting, And what we saw is that, and we thought it would be the opposite. The moment they went to work remote and meetings became super focused, productivity just shot up. So when it comes to brainstorming, being together and so on, everybody comes to the office or in small numbers. We do it in separate days. But then when they work, productivity just went through the roof, which to me was, well, when it comes to development, not so surprising, but it was kind of an interesting shift to see. I think going forward, there was a big kind of, how you call it, barrier for companies to want to outsource their tech. So most companies, you would sit with a CTO of a big company and tell them, listen, I think all of your developers need to work from home. You would like splash with like cold water and you would told to go lie down and rest because you're talking crazy. The pandemic changed it to the point that it became now a leverage point for companies to offer. So if a company will not offer remote working as an option, it becomes a less viable company. If I'm now relocating to Malta, or not even relocating, I want to work in an iGaming company, one company will tell me you have to be in the office 9 to 5 all the time. There is no remote working, or remote working is you can choose one day a week or something. But another company would just say, listen, your job is a developer. You want to work from home? You can. You want to come to the office? You can. I know which company I would choose. So from that perspective, from a business perspective, I feel we are never going back to full office. It's going to be hybrid in my perspective, just because there's a demand for it. I think it's also a smart move for companies, because if I can recruit remotely, think about it. We had a huge tech shortage of talent on the island in Malta. You don't have to recruit now in Malta. You can recruit anywhere in your time zone. Let's say if you don't want to go recruit in Thailand because it's like 6 hours like ahead. Yeah. But at the moment it's the same time zone, you can actually have now a talent pool that is all of Europe, for example. This is huge. Mm-hmm. This is a huge change. I think that
that makes you much more competitive, I suppose, in that sort of sense, and allows companies to go the extra mile, I suppose, in terms of attracting those people and give those benefits that are around. So are we going to see much more movement towards that, much more competition in the talent pool place, do you think?
I can say that we already see. So from our business model, we already see big competition in terms of a lot of companies that did not consider recruiting in like our sectors and market are now doing so. So everyone that is no longer just looking for, if my company is in Germany, I'm not only looking to recruit in Germany, it becomes all of Europe and beyond. So in my view, companies that will not offer that, the hybrid model, but really, with thinking of employees, it won't be like not a checkbox mentality. Oh, we did it. Our HR policy says that you have 2 days from home. Or if it's not going to be part of how the company works, I don't see companies surviving if they won't do that. They would be the...
It becomes part of the benefits or the incentives, isn't it?
Yeah.
It will become a standard, like a 24 days holiday and stuff like that. If you don't give that person that flexibility, I imagine companies will be falling behind on that.
Yeah, I will be as bold. I will be as bold to say the same way iPhone changed the phone industry. It's the same thing. It's like you don't go. You have a keyboard now.
It's a bold
you have a keyboard on your phone. You're a less viable phone. You are the low tech phone now, right? It's going to be the same. Companies, and again, it's not all industries. I'm referring to iGaming and digital industries specifically. There are retail and a lot of industries that cannot just do it from home. Yeah. But in our industry, I think that companies that won't offer the hybrid model are going to be just less viable. It's like they will have a lot of trouble attracting talents. Or maybe
Are you seeing you mentioned you have clients outside the iGaming. How is those industries faring compared to iGaming? iGaming is traditionally innovative, forward-thinking. Are we far ahead of everyone? Or are we still got a lot of finding out to do and looking into and can you bring suggestions?
That's a really great. I have to tell you, you're asking like really great questions. I really enjoyed it. It's like it's like, thank you. Thank you. You're like a great interviewer. Thank you. So. There's certain, so we have affiliates in other industries that are not iGaming, not finance, not like the typical ones. They are more retail oriented on very specific niches. Mm-hmm. They are very tech savvy. So I would say they are really comparable to iGaming and fintech in the sense of the technology base. I also am involved in other projects that are more US focused and has to do with education and so on. Surprisingly, they are light years behind when it comes to technology. So it means that you could see the processes that they work between one another in the funnel to get the leads and so on is very, very behind. So I would give a kudos to the iGaming industry that it's very, very tech focused. The thing that I would say that the iGaming would need to focus more is actually the adaptation to what's going on now in the world, because in a lot of companies that is really falling behind. So I know for companies it's really hard to change those sort of mindset to, for example, offer hybrid work or tell workers, listen, if you don't want to ever come to the office, you don't have to. I know it's really hard. It's really hard to change that mindset. But the thing is that a lot of those fears that companies have from an HR perspective, the moment they will just do it and they will let it be for a while, they will see that all of those fears just never come to be. You don't have, you'll have the extreme cases of employees going rogue, but in most cases, this is not the case. It's like you don't have to have people on a leash, in an office and so on. So I think in that aspect, the industry can improve a lot. It feels sometimes... It's like if you remember the old banking system, they are still existing, right? Like the old banks, comparison to Revolut or TransferWise.
Yeah.
So compare these experiences. If you now need to go and get a credit card from your old bank, or you now need to order a credit card on Revolut or TransferWise. These are stark differences. With the bank, it's going to be taking time out of your day. You need to go and do stuff. It will be a lot of bureaucracy. With Revolut, you press a button, you get it. So it's like, I think the industry needs to really improve on their kind of these sort of processes. But from a technology perspective, it's, I wasn't surprised because iGaming is really technology focused and it's been around since 90s? Like 888 was in 97, I think. So we're developing this technology for 20, 30 years. So it's, that's not surprising, but depends. Other industries are also tech savvy, but depends which. Things that I thought that would be very technology oriented were really, really not. Yeah.
Well, listen, look, I think our time's up now. So, listen, Ori, thank you so much for your time. It would be great to sort of revisit this, I suppose, in 6 months to see if your forecasting is true. And look, it's been a pleasure understanding about you and your organisation and your thoughts for the future going forward. So thank you once again, and hopefully see you again.
Thank you, Rory. It was a pleasure to be in iGaming next. Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.